Namaste, friends! Today, we are going to explore how food affects our mind and energy. This is broken down into two parts. For part one, we will start by looking into the food chain and see how energy is transferred from the sun, which is the source of all energy, down along this chain, and how this is the basis of why many yogis are vegetarians besides living an ahimsa lifestyle. Ahimsa means non-violence. And then I'll be sharing with you my story on how I became a vegetarian, which really started as an investigative experiment, and how I found out many bizarre things, including parasites and their mind control. I will also be revealing a bonus tip on how to get the highest quality of energy that has the life force or prana in it. Most of the vegetables in the grocery stores do not have this life force anymore, so stay tuned to find out how. The primary source of energy for all ecosystem on Earth is the sun. And actually, only 2 to 10% of this solar energy is captured by plants via photosynthesis. And this is a relatively small amount of energy which sustains the entire living world on Earth. The energy of sunlight fixed in food production by green plants is then passed down the food chain when herbivores consume the plants. Note that when energy is passed down from one trophic level to the next, there is a loss of 90% of this energy as heat through respiration, excretion, or decomposition. And that means only 10% of the energy is captured by the herbivores. This 10% energy transfer is actually universal for all transitions from one trophic level to another. So that means when a carnivore eats a herbivore, it is only getting 10% of that already limited energy from that herbivore. In other words, herbivores are getting 10% of energy from the plants they eat, while carnivores are only getting 1% of energy from the plants through the herbivore they consumed. And if you consume a carnivore, you are only getting 0.1% of that energy. Now, completing the cycle, all plants and animals will eventually die, decompose, and broken down by detrivores such as worms, snails, and yes, cockroaches too. I've included this because I don't particularly like them for many years, but I thought they have such a bad reputation among humans, so this is my attempt as a sorry to them for my past actions to change our impressions on these amazing beings. They are actually the hardworking recyclers of our planet, so kudos to cockroaches. Thank you for your existence. All of the broken down organic matters are then absorbed by plants as nutrients. In this way, energy flows through the ecosystem. To summarize, the energy uptake from food decreases the further away from the sun. So further down the food chain, it decreases. Now you might wonder, what is the connection between this and meditation? Well, as you might already guess, in meditation, it is all about energy. That is why, for thousands of years, yogis are advised to have a vegetarian diet. Vegetarians eat at the top of this food chain, since they eat plants that derive their nutrients directly from the sun. Therefore, they are getting the highest level of energy. On top of that, the quality of energy is cleanest, and it is also said to be the most subtle in nature because it is closest to light or light energy, which is from the sun. And as the saying goes, you are what you eat. When you consume plants, especially ones that are exposed under direct sunlight, your energy level increases and you become more subtle and closer to light in nature as well. There is also an ancient sacred practice called sun yoga, where a mastery of this practice allows the yogi to gather energy directly from the sun. This is the highest quality of energy one can get, which will result in more peace and clarity in mind. The sun yogi then doesn't need to have any more physical food, as all of the energy is derived directly from the sun. I have met one such master of sun yoga along my spiritual journey named Sun Yogi Umar Shankar. He is a well-known yogi who is said to have not eaten for about 11 years, but much more than that, he is actually a powerful advocate for universal peace and sun yoga. He's also the direct disciple of Mahavatar Babaji. And actually, he is a former electrical engineer in India and a true scientist at heart because he has dedicated his life to study our physical world and nature through observation and experience, by spiritual practice and by experimenting everything with himself. And I really resonated with him on this part and had the blessing to learn from him by chance as our paths cross. The love, sincerity, and fire to promote peace for this world remains an inspiration to me. Today, I wanted to share with you my story on how I became a vegetarian. I've always attributed my transition into becoming a vegetarian to my former career and training as a student of forensic science. Because as a forensic scientist, it is imperative to be objective, keep an open mind to all possibilities, refrain from any judgment or expectations, to always investigate, collect data, and then only make an informed conclusion or decision. In fact, this very mindset itself has led me into an investigation of who am I through meditation and yoga in 2015, ever since I experienced an evidence of inner light expanding during a sitting meditation. Now, this mindset is very much like Shoshin, the Zen Buddhist way of approaching any subject as a beginner, with a completely open mind to all possibilities, uncolored by our own perceptions and free from any expectations. You can watch the video titled "Do This Before Any Meditation" for the full guidance. This investigation of who am I, which I often refer to as a spiritual journey, is really a series of experiments to test out various teachings, practices, and ancient philosophies without any judgment and with an open mind where anything is possible. This led me to dive into the depths of my being and experientially investigate for myself using my body and mind as my laboratory. I've learned that it is much better to say I don't know yet than that is not possible, to keep our doors open to infinite growth and possibilities. With the same mindset, my decision on becoming a vegetarian started as an experiment to determine the effects of a vegetarian diet on meditation, knowing the intricate relationship between meditation and energy. The hypothesis of the experiment was a vegetarian diet would increase one's energy level based on the food chain theory, thus improving one's meditation. The materials for this experiment includes distilled water, organic vegetables, so they are mostly leafy greens because anything exposed directly under the sun are said to contain the highest energy level. I also had living plants in pots, so they are mostly herbs, and living salads, living sprouts, which are home sprouted from seeds. Or to cut down on sugar, most fruits were fermented to remove the sugar content. I did quite a bit of cold pressed vegetable and fruit juice as well. So here are the methods. I started with a 3-day water fast, drinking only 100% pure distilled water to reset my system. But please do not do this at home without consulting your doctor first, as it could really pose real danger to your health, especially if you have some pre-existing health conditions. If you really want to try, you can start with just 1-day water fast. But even that, please consult your doctor. So, after resetting my system, I only consumed plant-based food for an entire month. Most of what I consumed was raw, big bowls of salad, hummus from raw vegetables, low temperature soups to maintain the nutrients. 90% of these ingredients were organic, no more processed food, no more meat. I also had a lot of homemade living ferments filled with good bacteria. And each day I would meditate and note down my energy level, experiences in meditation, and really any other observations for data collection. Here was what I observed. On day 1, during the water fast, I had sudden strong cravings for processed fried food. Now, I usually don't crave for this type of food, and I was surprised to have flashes of images of fried chicken in my mind. And I've never really craved for fried chicken so much. I felt very, very hungry as well. It was also impossible to meditate. My mind was very agitated, and I think it was because I knew I was not going to eat for 3 days. Like, oh, this is going to last for 3 days. But on day 2, surprisingly, the cravings for processed food mysteriously switched to sweet food. Okay, I was craving for a lot of sweet food. All I wanted was something sweet. I felt even more hungry and weak, which is only natural. And not only is my mind agitated, but I started feeling very emotional as well. It was very, very challenging to meditate because of all of these turbulence, this mental and emotional turbulence. On day 3, however, I woke up feeling energized. Suddenly, I had no more cravings for food, and surprisingly, I didn't even feel hungry, but there was a new craving for sunlight that I was experiencing. All I wanted to do was sunbathe under the golden warm light, and I would feel more energized every time I do it. I felt a pleasant sense of lightness in my body and this beautiful peace in my mind. My meditation started improving, and I think this is because of the mental and emotional turbulence has stopped. I felt like I could continue this water fast for a few more days, but I was losing too much weight and muscles, so I just had to stop. By day 4, this is when I started eating again and just focusing on very clean food, right? 90% raw plant-based diet. And I immediately noticed my indigestion issues disappeared. So I used to have indigestion problems almost after every meal. especially when, it's meat heavy. I would experience my stomach bloating and I would be in so much pain. I was so used to it all my life that I thought it's normal, like it's just me. All of that went away just like that, and I never felt so renewed and rejuvenated before. My energy level definitely increased immediately as well, and I notice it is more so whenever I have living plants and living ferments. I just always feel so radiantly alive whenever I have these like living plants and ferments. The heaviness I used to feel after each meal is now replaced with a sense of lightness in my body, and my mind is so clear and peaceful, making it just so much easier to meditate. And between day 10 to 20, all of the symptoms from day 4 to 10 that we just discussed is experienced at an increment level. So more energy, I felt lighter in my body. It's also much easier to meditate with a calmer and peaceful mind. All of this made me very happy and joyful, and because I've been paying close attention to my body, I felt like I could really listen to what my body is telling me much more clearly. It's all about the practice. By day 20 to 30, so all the symptoms from day 10 to 20 we just discussed was still experienced, but there were some new side effects I noticed. I remember looking at the mirror one day and just suddenly noticing my skin appearing smoother, my complexion more even, less redness on my skin. Hair fall is reduced, some old scars suddenly showed signs of healing. I was just so amazed by how fast things can change in our body by just making these changes to our diet. And I can say that, all these experiences that I'm getting, all these new improvement in my complexion, it can't compare to anything that we put on our skin. So, if you want to improve your complexion, start from the inside. Now, another surprising side effect I noticed was that my level of compassion naturally increased. I used to wipe the kitchen counter that has some ants on it with a cloth without even thinking, without even blinking an eye. But suddenly I became more aware and it just felt wrong to kill the ants. I remember that was the moment where I really made this decision to stop killing any beings. By that time, I already stopped killing mosquitoes, but since then, I really stopped killing all beings. Now, I found out why I was experiencing more compassion by changing my diet only much later, which I will discuss in part 2 in the upcoming video. So by the end of the month, with so many positive life changes, I was fully convinced to become a vegetarian and never looked back since. So I never really suppressed myself, thinking that I need to do this because I'm a yoga teacher or because I want to, live a yogic lifestyle. It all just happened naturally when I started with this experiment, and I just felt like I'm very aligned with this vegetarian diet. And fast forward now, I'm moving towards a fully plant-based vegan lifestyle, so cutting out also milk, cheese. It's still not 100% because it's very challenging. It's especially when it comes to socializing. I like to be a little bit more flexible, but I feel internally aligned to make this transition. Now let's dive into the discussions of the data and observations we have collected. So let's start with day 1 and 2. So after doing some research, I found out that the reason why I had sudden strong cravings for these, processed food. I had flashes of images of fried chicken appearing in my mind. Is because there are these parasites in our body that actually exerts mind control. They exert this mind control to get us to feed them by creating a strong desire for certain kinds of food that they feed on. So it depends on what they feed on. And if we don't know about them, we will just innocently think that these are our own desires and cravings for processed food and sweet food. And unknowingly, we would just reach out for that food and feed them. And after feeding them, they would actually release a bunch of toxins through their waste materials and excrements. And that is why we don't feel great after having this sort of food. I know I feel like I'm the bad guy to tell you about these parasites. It's not easy for me to say this, but everybody has these parasites in the body. And have you ever wondered, why is it that we don't desperately crave for a healthy, bland salad? I'm not referring to the salad covered with dressings filled with sugar, those tasty, sugary dressings. I'm talking about, just very clean, healthy salad. We never really desperately crave for these things. So everybody has these parasites in their body, and we don't know they're controlling us to a certain extent until we experiment it for ourselves and disconnect them completely. And the way to do it is to cut off 100% of their food source. So for me, drinking pure distilled water ensured that there wasn't a drop of sugar or a piece of processed food for them to feed on. Okay, time for a little bit of good news. Surprisingly, they all left pretty quickly. It's quite easy to eliminate them. Okay, so within 2 days, 3 days, they're all gone from my system. However, I would say this might be a variable depending on your pre-existing diet. And the mind control can really be a big distraction during meditation because thoughts about food popping up, even though you've just had your meal, even though you've had enough to eat. So this can be really distracting. And to be free from these mind-controlling parasites gives you a whole new sense of freedom for your mental peace. Interestingly, I found out that they feed in a hierarchy level. These parasites that feeds on processed food gets to eat first, followed by those who eat sugar, those who feed on sugar. That is why even after you've had your main meal, which is often very savory in nature, there is always room for desserts. This is aligned with my observation, whereby day 1 I had strong cravings for processed food, and once I've disconnected these group of parasites, on day 2 I had strong cravings for sugar from the second group of parasites. The mental and emotional agitation I was experiencing was actually from these parasites desperately trying to get me to feed them for their survival. That is why I've never experienced such a big craving for fried chicken and sweet food in my life, because this time it was for their survival. So they're really serious about it. And this experiment gave me a first-hand experience on parasites and their mind control. Now, by day 3, my cravings for sugar and processed fried food disappeared because most of the parasites have died from hunger. The 100% pure distilled water did not contain a single drop of food for them to feed on. Therefore, they no longer exert any more mind control. And I remember that morning when I woke up, I felt like a different person. Like there was a sense of freedom and my mind was so peaceful and calm. The reason for a decrease in hunger for me is still uncertain. The desire to be under sunlight was an interesting observation. Perhaps I was, enjoying the heat energy transfer from the sun to my skin because I wasn't eating, I was feeling cold. And I've always felt more energized after connecting with the sun. So let's discuss our observations for day 4 to 10. So by day 4, I started eating again, but this time cutting out meat completely. And I realized the indigestion issues, which are abdominal pain and bloating, that I had all my life were related to meat consumption. So mystery solved. Meat is said to take much longer to digest, and after cutting out meat, immediately after my meals, I would still feel light and energized versus the usual heaviness and sleepiness I used to feel. It could also be the living ferments I've been consuming, which has improved my digestion. I noticed that my energy level is especially high, with a feeling of being radiantly alive after having living plants and ferments. So these are living good bacteria. One of the positive effects of meditation is that it increases our sensitivity to energy and the ability to listen to our body. So instead of just relying on what is good for our body from books and the internet, you can rely on yourself by listening to your body. Just notice how your body feels after each meal and pay attention. With that said, here's a secret tip. Plants that are harvested and immediately consumed within 15 minutes still contains its life force or prana from the sun. So do your best to consume living plants, herbs. You can sprout your own beans. I always use green beans, and whenever I travel, I always make an effort to purchase some green beans and just sprout them myself. Make your own ferments. These are all the highest quality of energy you can ever get through food consumption. And I would advise to purchase fresh food from local farms compared to getting those imported goods. Okay, let's discuss the observations from day 10 to 20. So plant-based meals, which is based on the 90% raw diet, increase not only the quantity of energy in our system, but also the quality of energy. The lightness felt in my body is most likely because plants are at the top of the food chain, which derives their energy directly from sunlight, which is basically light energy. My happiness level also increased, probably from a variety of reasons. It feels good to have a positive, healthy diet. The high vibrational food lifts you up and creates this inner joy within, and experiencing all these positive changes is also very motivating. Also, by paying attention to how our body feels each day, naturally our ability to listen to our body increases. We start to understand what the body needs and trusting that message instead of listening to the mind. Final discussion, day 20 to 30. So there are some side effects that came as a surprise to me because it wasn't part of the hypothesis of my experiment. The high quality, nutritious plant-based meals can vastly improve our physical well-being, especially raw and living plants with ferments. And I think that sugar-free diet is really important as well. I think majority of these changes on my skin and less hair falls, scars showing signs of healing, they are also attributed to the disconnection from the parasites that were living in our body, which everybody has. So these parasites would normally release a bunch of toxins in our body, and not only that, they are going to harvest our nutrients and energy that we so preciously need and so preciously feed ourselves through the food that we purchase, etc. Something strange also happened. I felt my kindness level increasing. I stopped killing the ants while I'm cleaning my house, where I would usually just wipe them with a piece of cloth. This was the moment where I decided to stop killing all beings and really live the ahimsa lifestyle. And the reason for this, which I found out only much later, I will discuss this in part 2 of the upcoming video under effects of ahimsa food or non-violent food. So just to conclude and summarize, a vegetarian diet would raw organic leafy greens contains the highest quantity and quality of energy that is closest to light, that can really improve one's meditation. Disconnecting parasites from mind control leads to a more peaceful mind. Living plants consumed within 15 minutes still has its life force or prana, and it's the highest quality of energy through food consumption. Ferments filled with living good bacteria has high life force or prana as well. So these also has the highest quality of energy. And this, I'm not really sure, but we may be able to absorb energy directly from the sun. And an ahimsa diet may naturally cultivate compassion and kindness. So that is all for part 1 of this video, and I hope to see you in part 2. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a beautiful day ahead. Namaste.